He didn't even try to hide it. Wednesday, 9:42 p.m. I'm brushing my teeth, winding down, and my phone lights up with a permissions ping. Someone's trying to mass copy my Pinegate Master Ops folder. Not access, not preview, clone. Full replication attempt from a credential tied to maddox.iahalvix.com. I stared at the screen like it had slapped me. I built that system. I hosted it. I paid the AWS bills myself every quarter. And now the new VP, barely 3 weeks into his power trip, thought he'd just yoink the heart of my analytics platform like it was a Pinterest board? If you're already gripped, take a second to like the video and subscribe. 97% of listeners forget, but it helps the team keep these stories alive. All right, let's keep going. The sync the next morning was tense. Everyone else on the call was chatting sprint goals, click-through anomalies, the usual. I was looking at Corbin's little muted face bubble, wondering if he had any clue what he'd just triggered. I said nothing. I just let the update roll, let the team make their decisions off dashboards they didn't even know were hosted under my LLC's jurisdiction. See? 5 years back, when I started as a fractional product architect, the company was still small, nimble, chaotic, no infrastructure to speak of, so I scoped and built one. Pinagate Analytics LLC was born out of necessity, a clean legal wrapper for the platform I developed in my off hours, one that would shield both sides from IP ambiguity. It was smart then. It's a fortress now. Buried deep in the original contract, page 34 of the MSA was a line most people never read. Vendor retains full control and administrative custody of hosted operational infrastructure unless revoked by board resolution. You don't get that kind of clause approved anymore. But back then, I was the only one building anything that actually worked. Corbin never asked, never consulted, just saw a shared drive with deliverables and assumed it was company property. Rookie move. That copy attempt triggered my Tripwire script, flagged the session ID, and snapshot archived the entire directory, every permission, every log, every failed attempt at exfiltration. I didn't get mad. I got documentation. After the sync, I sent him a simple email. No drama, no accusations, just, "Hey, noticed an unusual access attempt from your office. For your awareness, the Pinegate environment is hosted under separate contract terms. Let me know if you'd like me to loop in legal to clarify infrastructure boundaries." Silence. Not even a got it or a thumbs up. Just nothing. That was the first red flag. The second came 3 hours later when a junior dev pinged me asking why their Monday analytics loadout hadn't refreshed. I checked. Looked like someone had tried and failed to manually overwrite the dependency link from their local drive. It broke the reference chain. The third flag? An invoice bounce back. My automated billing system rejected the payment contact on file. Corbin had tried to consolidate vendors and deleted my invoice route. That's when I knew he wasn't just poking around. He was planning to gut the whole thing, take over the infrastructure, and probably in his head save the company money while streamlining operations. He had no idea what he was stepping into. He sent that email like he was ordering takeout. No subject line, no greeting, just a demand dressed up like a directive. Send me the password to the shared drive and clean out your desk. You're done here. I read it 3 times, blinked, and then read it again. For a second, I thought it had to be a mistake. Or maybe a phishing attempt. Who the hell fires someone over a folder? And through email? But no. It was from his corporate address, time-stamped 8:17 a.m., just minutes after our weekly metrics rolled out. Metrics he probably thought he could now access directly, if only he could find the right password to crack my drive open like a piñata. No call from HR. No calendar invite. No explanation of cause or contract closure. Just an attempt to steamroll decades of operational nuance with the charm of a car salesman pulling a power move. I took a breath. Then I wrote the calmest email of my life. "Hi, Corbin," I typed, hands steady, even as my pulse pressed in my throat. Per our agreement, the Pinegate hosted drive is managed under license and custodianship terms governed by my consulting LLC, not internal infrastructure. No password is required or available as the drive does not fall under internal IT jurisdiction. If you need clarification, I recommend checking with legal before proceeding further. I didn't sign off best or thanks. Just attach the relevant clause from the master agreement, the one people always skim over. Page 34, sub-bullet .way. Vendor retains exclusive administrative custody of cloud-based operational systems, absent board-level revocation. I BCC'd legal, then I sat back and watched the timestamp click into history. He had no idea what he'd just done. He thought I was a temp, a line item, a cleanup crew member who overstayed her welcome. But the funny thing about tech infrastructure, about real infrastructure, is that it's not loud. It doesn't advertise its importance, it just is, until it's not. The moment that email hit my inbox, I was released from SLA obligations. That folder, it wasn't the company's. It was a managed asset under contract with clearly defined access terms, license limits, and audit trails. He didn't ask. He didn't negotiate. He terminated in writing without realizing he had just triggered a clause buried like a landmine in his own system. And you know what? I wasn't even angry. There's something kind of beautiful about being underestimated by someone who thinks ownership is just about who shouts loudest. So I archived the email, synced the contract logs, and watched the Pinegate environment tick forward, fully operational, fully licensed, just not to him. Not anymore. There's a very specific kind of silence that happens right after someone realizes they've lit the fuse and can't find the fire extinguisher. You can almost feel it move through the air, like pressure dropping before a storm. Corbin had no idea that the moment he hit forward, he'd essentially fired an entire operational framework. His email to legal was 6 words long. Please handle. See below. Thanks. No context. No urgency, just the smug assurance of a man who thought titles granted immunity. Legal didn't reply to him. They forwarded it straight to the CEO, 1 line. That was it. You just fired your vendor. No caps, no bold, no drama, just a sentence so sharp it might as well have been typed with a scalpel. I got a copy of the forward through my BCC rule, standard automation on my end. Watched the thread unfold like slow motion chess. That was the moment the game ended. I didn't gloat, didn't even smile. Just leaned back in my chair, clicked export logs, then archived the entire exchange under a folder labeled escrow.trigger11c. Everything after that was mechanical, routine, precise. I closed the shared portal to external collaborators. Synced my audit trail for third-party systems. Watermarked the live environment with my LLC's logo, top right corner, unobtrusive but unmistakable. Every single snapshot from that hour onward bore the quiet seal of ownership. Not the company's, mine. The clause he tripped, buried on page 42 of the support annex, was clear as day. If at any point the contracting party issues an unapproved revocation of custodial rights, the vendor is released from all SLA and support commitments effective immediately. Effective immediately. I didn't have to call anyone, didn't have to justify myself. The contract did the speaking. My obligations evaporated the second Corbin's little tantrum hit send. I closed my laptop, and for the first time in 5 years, I didn't feel tethered to the refresh cycle. Didn't feel responsible for holding their spaghetti code processes together with duct tape and Sunday night stress. It wasn't vengeance. It was math. They broke the chain. I let go of the rope. And somewhere in legal, someone was probably flipping through a printed contract, realizing just how quietly everything had just shifted. Thursday morning looked like business as usual, until it wasn't. They logged in expecting things to hum like always. Morning sync, load the roadmap, review the velocity trends, pull the analytics for the last release. But instead, they were greeted by the digital equivalent of a shrug. Blank tiles, empty queries, graphs that once pulsed with predictive heat maps now reduced to data unavailable. Please contact administrator. Someone tried to reboot the dashboard instance. Someone else reauthorized their tokens. Another person opened a Jira ticket and tagged the internal IT team with missing OKRs plus sprint loadout. IT did what it does, checked the logs, saw the external path calls failing, and pinged me directly. First by Slack, then email, then a text. I read each one silently and did absolutely nothing. Not out of spite, not to prove a point. Just because I didn't have to. As of 9:04 a.m. the previous day, Pinegate Analytics LLC was no longer under service level obligation. No contract. No SLA, no access guarantee. I wasn't ghosting them. I was abiding by the very paperwork they forgot existed. By noon, panic was setting in. The design team couldn't access historical A/B test data for their rollout pitch. Finance couldn't reconcile last quarter's churn heat maps. Product couldn't trace dependencies on user feedback workflows because the input mapping API ran through a now dark endpoint. One senior manager, bless his oblivious heart, suggested just copying the last dashboard and tweaking it locally. That's when a junior PM dropped a screenshot in the Product Insights channel and asked innocently, "Why does the dashboard now say property of Pinegate Analytics LLC? Is that, like, new branding?" Silence. Then a flurry of eye emojis. Then the screenshot got deleted. But the damage was already done. By Friday afternoon, 4 departments were effectively flying blind. No models, no logs, no access to their own scaffolding, because their scaffolding wasn't theirs to begin with. They just never stopped to ask who was holding it up. And me? I went hiking. Left my phone in airplane mode, packed a thermos of coffee, and walked up a ridge I hadn't visited in months. Listened to the wind, the quiet, the complete and total absence of Slack notifications trying to duct tape broken systems back together. That was the first time I realized how deeply I'd trained myself to answer calls that never respected my boundaries. And now? Now I didn't owe them a single damn thing. They called it a transition sync. But no one was fooled. The calendar invite hit inboxes at 7:52 a.m., marked urgent in all caps, issued from the VP's office, no agenda attached, just a block of time and a Zoom link with too many executives in the participant list. I joined anonymously. Viewer only, no camera, no name. A courtesy copy of the meeting flowed to me through a legacy shared calendar integration they'd forgotten to revoke. Corbin came in hot. Hair slicked back like he'd been up all night trying to wrestle an explanation into something that resembled control. He started talking about streamlining infrastructure ownership and vendor phase-out alignment, trying to pass off the silence as strategy, the kind of corporate hand-waving that works on people who haven't seen what failure smells like. Then legal unmuted. One voice, crisp and surgical. "You didn't read the termination clause. You severed vendor rights without board clearance. As of last Wednesday, the company has no legal or operational access to the Pinegate environment. You've lost custodianship." The air left the room. You could hear someone exhale through their nose like they'd just realized they were sitting on a live wire. The screen shifted. A document appeared. It was my final invoice, submitted the day the clause triggered. Line item 5 was bolded. SLA suspended per section 11C of vendor agreement, custodial termination clause executed. You could see people scanning it in real time, eyes darting, jaws tightening. Someone coughed. Someone else muted. Corbin blinked like he'd been slapped with a wet contract. "This wasn't," he started. Legal cut in again. All folders associated with Pinegate Analytics were protected under escrow terms. Usage logs, edit trails, and attempted extractions have been archived. As of termination, all unauthorized interactions were forwarded for legal review. That part hit harder than I expected, because what they didn't know, what only legal had started to grasp, was that the compliance tracker I'd embedded wasn't just for audit fluff. It was surgical. Every document touched post-termination, every attempt to clone a file, download a sheet, reroute a dependency. It all got logged and bundled into a neat daily digest, automatically, encrypted, sent to legal. Someone on the call finally asked what everyone else was thinking. "Can we fix this?" Legal didn't answer, but the silence said it all. Corbin looked smaller in that moment, not just embarrassed, reduced. Like he'd thought he was playing tug of war with a puppet, only to realize he'd yanked the cord on a live system and pulled down the ceiling. And me? I sat in my kitchen, wrapped in a flannel, sipping coffee that had been brewed long before that meeting started. No rage, no smugness, just stillness. Because when you're right, contractually right, there's nothing left to argue. By noon, the platform flatlined. No preamble, no countdown, just gone. Pinegate Analytics servers, previously humming along like quiet sentinels behind every product decision, every forecast report, every executive KPI dashboard, shut their doors to all but internal IP addresses. External sessions were dropped. Token refreshes failed. Any attempt to reestablish access hit a bloodless banner. Access suspended. Consult vendor. It thought it was a bug. Product thought it was maintenance. Corbin thought he still had leverage. He did not. I was 2 states away, walking out of a pottery studio with my phone on silent when the text barrage started. 6 missed calls. 3 voicemails from numbers I didn't recognize. A calendar invite titled Restoration Plan Discussion. Urgent. All unanswered. Corbin, I later heard, stormed down the hallway like a man on fire, straight into Legal's glass-walled corner of the building. Everyone could hear him. I want her reinstated, he snapped. Today, this whole thing is a disaster. Legal didn't raise their voices. They never had to. You can't, one of them replied. You fired the license holder. Her LLC isn't obligated to reinstate anything, especially not after termination without board review. Corbin stood there, jaw working, like he wanted to fight the air itself. That's when the CFO, silent until that moment, spoke. He didn't yell, didn't mock, just looked over the rim of his glasses and asked, "Did you even know she owned the infrastructure?" Silence. Not the kind that comes from guilt, but the kind that comes from sheer, unfiltered realization. The sound of a man understanding he wasn't the architect. He was the wrecking ball, and the building was still standing. Just not for him. Meanwhile, back on the ground floor, department heads were trying to figure out what the hell consult vendor meant. Marketing was locked out of the entire A/B testing archive. Finance couldn't process their Q4 projections because the entire financial model suite ran through a live Pinegate instance. Someone tried to re-upload the old dashboards from a stale backup and immediately got flagged by the embedded watermarking protocol. Even the design team's file library, years of iterative mock-ups, user notes, localization overlays, dead in the water. Every tool they used pointed back to a cloud system that no longer recognized them. I didn't lift a finger. Didn't need to. Because when you build the thing, really build it, not as an employee, not under blanket IP assumptions, but under contractual custody, then removal isn't personal. It's just a reset to the state of things before they started taking you for granted. And I'll tell you something strange. You can feel it. The exact moment the panic begins, even 2 states away in a sunlit cafe eating a sandwich in absolute peace. I knew. It only took 3 days for the facade to crack completely. Legal went into full triage mode. They ransacked their archive, pulling every version of the original contract, every amendment, every access provision tied to the Pinegate stack. What they found wasn't a loophole, it was a fortress. Every clause, every comma, airtight. My LLC's custodial rights had been baked in, signed off by the then CTO, a man who retired 2 fiscal years ago and now lives somewhere in Montana, raising dogs and ignoring email. The clause Corbin violated wasn't vague. It was explicit. Any attempt to alter vendor custodianship required majority board approval, logged vote, and a 30-day transition plan approved by both parties. Instead, Corbin fired off a 7-word email. That email, it turns out, cost them operational control, breached 3 separate continuity policies, and nullified any claim they had to the live analytics infrastructure. The audit trail proved everything, down to the minute. I didn't respond to the messages that started pouring in. Not the panicked Slack DMs, not the last-ditch outreach from HR pretending to touch base, not the LinkedIn note from Corbin's assistant, who, according to someone still on the inside, resigned on the spot after realizing she'd helped trigger the sequence. My replacement was brought in quickly. Too quickly. A contractor flown in from Chicago with a padded rate and a smile like he'd just walked onto a new TV pilot. They gave him access to the building, a laptop, a briefing folder, and nothing else. When he logged into Pinegate's dashboard, he saw a clean white screen. No permissions, no root access, no infrastructure keys, just a lockout screen that politely read, "Credentials invalid. Please contact system owner." He reached out to Legal. Legal reached out to me. I didn't reply, because I'd already left them everything they needed. A single PDF stored in the contract drive titled, "Access Governance Transition, only valid with full countersignature." It sat there like a forgotten grenade. Unsigned. No countersignature, no trigger. Just a document that outlined in meticulous clarity the process for handing over admin rights, if and only if both parties agreed. It had been sitting there for years, untouched, waiting, not as a trap, but as a safety net they never bothered to understand. They wanted to bypass me, bypass the process. Instead, they bypassed their own lifeline. I watched the chaos unfold from a distance, calm, unmoved, and utterly uninterested in playing fixer. Let them see what happens when you assume infrastructure is just wires and code. It's not. It's ownership. And ownership doesn't need to yell to be heard. It just sits there, silently refusing to let you back in. It came late on a Thursday, the call I knew would eventually come. Private number, no voicemail, just persistence. 3 rings, then 4. On the 5th, I answered. It was the CEO. Voice like smooth gravel, polite but stretched thin. He didn't bother with small talk. Just launched straight into it like we were both reading the same grim briefing memo. We'd like to discuss reinstatement, he said. Not just picking up where things left off, but reestablishing continuity, possibly bringing you into an executive support role, advisory, dotted line, flexible structure. I let him speak. Let him wrap the desperation in layers of corporate velvet. He used words like realignment, strategic recovery, clean handoff. But I heard what he didn't say. The new ops model was in shambles. The backups were stale. The dependencies too tangled. The guy they onboarded, out of his depth and already whispering about legacy entanglements he couldn't even map. When he finally stopped talking, I said one thing. The contract worked as intended. Silence. Then he asked if there was anyone I'd trust to come in and stabilize things. There was. A former protege, sharp, calm, surgical with code, and better at politics than I ever cared to be. She'd helped me build parts of Pinegate's early interface when she was still green. Now she ran her own consulting outfit with a reputation for handling institutional messes without flinching. I gave him her name, her terms, and made it clear. Pinegate Analytics LLC would remain the license holder. All access would now require escrow-secured tokens, rotated quarterly, board-monitored, non-negotiable. He agreed. Didn't even try to argue. The board had already locked down infrastructure changes pending vendor oversight. Corbin's shiny new streamlined ops roadmap was shelved indefinitely. Every system touchpoint now ran through review. I didn't ask about Corbin, didn't care if he was still there or quietly moved to special projects. His relevance had expired the second he confused control with authority. After the call ended, I didn't feel triumphant. There was no music swelling, no cinematic moment of glory. Just a steady sense of alignment, of a boundary reinforced, not out of revenge, but out of clarity. I had built something that stood, not because they liked me, not because they needed me, but because it worked. And now they had to earn their way back in, one escrow token at a time. Weeks passed. Quiet ones. No more panicked pings, no legal escalations, no awkward emails pretending like nothing had happened. Just the hum of systems stabilizing under new rules, my rules. The platform came back online slowly, piece by piece. Escrow tokens activated, access logs rebuilt from scratch, infrastructure keys handed out like sacred scrolls. Verified, double-signed, locked behind quarterly resets. No more convenience logins, no more shadow copies. Every department now had to request access like it was a privilege, not a right. And in the bottom corner of every dashboard, just beneath the login fields, sat the new disclaimer. Infrastructure and Data Custodianship by Pinegate Analytics LLC, licensed through 2026. No internal override permitted without board ratification. Simple, quiet, permanent. I hadn't written it to gloat. I wrote it to remind. At an industry panel not long after, the CEO took the stage for a session on operational risk and continuity. I wasn't invited. Didn't want to be. But I watched the stream, live, muted, as he shifted in his chair and used words like lesson learned and strategic overreach. Then he paused and gave the room a line I hadn't expected. This wasn't about sabotage, he said. It was a lesson in respecting vendor boundaries. Some systems aren't broken. They're just built by someone who remembers what trust used to mean. He didn't say my name. Didn't need to. Back in my home office, the morning light poured in through the blinds. My coffee had gone lukewarm. The stream rolled on. No smile crossed my face, no victory dance, just stillness. The kind of stillness that comes when you've said everything you needed to through design, discipline, and dotted lines, when your name doesn't have to be on the screen to shape the outcome, when control isn't about attention, it's about architecture, and that final thought settled in like dust on polished glass. Control isn't loud, it's silent, until someone tries to take it.